In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the exact things you need to look at while you're sourcing on Amazon to make sure you have a good, profitable product. If you're new to the channel, my name is Warner Fields from SellerAmp, and it's our goal with the channel to equip you with the tools and knowledge that you need to go out and crush selling on Amazon. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be breaking down kind of a checklist of things that you want to look at while you're sourcing items to sell on Amazon, some things that beginners might not think about. So hopefully I'll help you avoid some pitfalls and help save you some money in this video. And if you do enjoy the content, be sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. That helps us out big time. Let's go ahead and jump into the content. So I went ahead and pulled up this example product here just to have a quick discussion about profitability. So while you're sourcing your very first product for Amazon, I'd not encourage you to go out and buy this product. Just an example I pulled up. I would encourage you to look for 35% return on investment when you're buying products, and typically about $3 to $5 profit per unit. Some people go as high as $10 profit per unit while they're sourcing their very first products. If you're more on the advanced side, you can probably go a little bit lower. So in this case, on this particular product right here, we would need to be paying $32.38 for this to meet our threshold of that 35% ROI. And right here on SellerAmp, it actually suggests that max cost option for us. So while you're outsourcing these products, so for example, this next example I've got pulled up for us, it's going to tell me, hey, you need to buy this product for $73.88 for it to meet your profit standards. And you can configure that in the back end of your SellerAmp account. But as you're sourcing, make sure you're actually going to be profitable. Make sure you set those thresholds as high as they need to be, because once you consider shipping and returns and any other types of expenses that you might incur from selling these products, you're going to want to make sure you have that all baked into your margin. Personally, I'll go as low as making a 25% ROI on a product if it's a really high volume. I've also been selling on Amazon for quite a while, so I might have a little bit more experience than you, and I'm comfortable going down to those low ROIs. But if you're someone who's been selling on Amazon for a little bit and you're now experienced, you know what to look for in an item, it's okay to lower your standards just a little bit to make sure you're getting through your inventory budget. But just to kind of break down the first thing to look at while you're sourcing products, make sure you have a 35% ROI or higher, or I like to look for $3. Some people will look for $5 profit per unit, but especially as you're starting out in your Amazon business, make sure you do stick to that rule. You want to make sure you're not compromising and ending up not profitable at the end of the day, right? So this next example of a product that I want to show you here, kind of the next item on the checklist here, is to make sure that the items have consistent pricing. So as we scroll down here on SellerAmp, we can open up the chart here. And basically what I'm looking for on this chart is I'm looking for consistency in pricing. So this purple line right here is showing me the buy box. I can click away some of these other things to simplify it as well. So right here, all I want to see is the sales rank on this item as well as the buy box price. If you're unfamiliar with that term, basically when you go over here on Amazon and you click add to cart, this is the buy box. Pretty much all sales on Amazon go through the buy box, especially if the listing has a buy box. That's a little bit more advanced topic though. So your goal as an Amazon seller is to be in the buy box as long as possible. So on a listing, in this case, I'm looking to make sure that that buy box price is relatively stable. And I pulled up this example right here because oftentimes people will make the mistake of looking for a completely flat buy box price line, or they're looking at buy box price lines that are either decreasing or increasing. And if you see any unusual behavior in the buy box price line, a lot of times it means that your item might not be quite so safe over the long run. So that if the price was much cheaper in the past, then it's a little bit reasonable that the price could return back to those pricing. So that's why I like to look at the buy box price here. Another thing that you can think about here in this example, you know, we'd want to buy this item for about 73 bucks. Let's say we found it for 73 bucks. Another thing you can go ahead and plug in here on SellerAmp is make sure that it's profitable at the average buy box prices. So right now the price is $135. Awesome. But I want to see what happens. What if the price goes to the average price for the last 30 days? Okay, I get a little bit less profitable, but I'm still at a 33% ROI. That's still plenty of profit for me. What about 90-day average? It goes a little bit up. So this tells me that this item's pretty stable. We could even go to 180, and again, we're getting pretty stable. How about all time? All time is also stable. So this tells me this item is extremely stable over the long run. And so for this item, unless a whole bunch of people were able to find this item cheap enough, you know, in this case for $73, I would imagine this particular item would be pretty tricky to find for that price. It's selling a crazy amount of times. But if people were able to buy it at that price in massive volume, we might see the price go down a little bit. On an item with this much volume, I really wouldn't be worried about it. But that's just to show you, make sure your items are profitable over the long run. A lot of times you can jump onto a listing and maybe right now it's selling for 135 bucks, but you look at this chart here and in the past it's always been selling for 110 bucks. And then, you know, you plug in 110 and suddenly, oh man, I lost pretty much all my profit. I'm only making $5, 7% ROI. There's way better products that I could buy than that. that. So make sure you're always profitable in the long run on an item, and that'll help you avoid price tanking. I know a lot of beginners fall into that as well, where they buy an item and the price falls, and you just don't want to run into that. So make sure your items are profitable over the long run. Look at those buy box average prices and make sure it's genuinely profitable for a while. So this next part of our checklist here is a pretty simple one. While you're sourcing products, just make sure that Amazon is not a seller on those listings. There's very rare exceptions where we can compete with Amazon as third-party sellers, but for the most part, especially if you're trying to source your first couple products, Amazon is not going to share sales with you as a third-party seller. Every now and then they will if they're out of stock or on back order, all that kind of stuff. But as a general rule, I would just stay away from listings that Amazon is on until you've got a little bit more experience. So basically what I'm looking for on this item right here, number one, I can see that the Amazon right here is on this listing for $21. I don't even need SellerAmp in this case. I can see that it's selling, it ships from Amazon, sold by Amazon, and then I can also scroll down to the charts here, and anywhere I see that there's this orange this orange line here, that tells me that Amazon is on it. You see that orange highlighting down there. Let me go ahead and unselect this and this so you can see it a little bit better. So if you ever see orange like this on your graph, you can see basically for the whole last year, maybe there's a little bit of a gap back in March where you can see the orange kind of goes in and out. So maybe third-party sellers were selling it a little bit back then, but make sure you're not selling items that Amazon's selling. They're not going to share sales with you. It's their ball game, right? So just stay away from listings that Amazon is on as a general rule. Another thing, part of our checklist that I want to talk about here is when the brand itself is on the listing. So similar to when Amazon is on a listing, if the brand itself is on the listing, generally they own the brand registry, which essentially allows them to control the sales on a listing. So oftentimes, even if you did try to sell an item like this, these sales would not naturally rotate to you. And on top of that, one thing we can look at here, right here, it says ships from, sold by Eva NYC Hair Care. This product right here, as we can see up at the top, is by Eva NYC. Eva NYC is the brand name. So very clearly, the brand who creates this product does not want us to sell on this listing. They're kind of controlling the sales here. If you spent a ton of effort getting this product to sell 1,600 times a month, you'd probably control your listings pretty well too. So if you ever come across a listing and it's profitable, but the brand itself is selling on that listing, number one, they're not going to share sales with you. And number two, they're probably going to give you what's called an IP complaint. Essentially, they're going to say, hey, you are not authorized to sell on this listing. We didn't authorize you to sell on this listing. They're going to request your documentation, all that good stuff. If you're buying these on an online arbitrage basis, you'll usually be able to beat those with your invoices and receipts, so long as the information matches what's on your seller account. But it's still just a needless headache. It's just a really easy thing to make part of that checklist. Just make sure you're not competing with the brand itself who's selling these individual products. And then just as an additional pro tip as well, down here on the offers tab, if you're not sure, if you look at a listing and there's only one seller on it, but the seller name doesn't quite match the brand name, that can happen pretty often as well. We can actually click on the seller name. In this case, Eva NYC is sitting right there. It's obvious, but maybe it's a different LLC name. It's just a generic company name. We're not sure if the brand is controlling that listing. We could go ahead and click on their FBA button or their MFN button, and we can see what kind of brands they're selling. So even if this seller name was not Eva NYC, we would say, hey, this brand is only selling this brand of products. They're probably that brand, or they're probably an authorized distributor or the sole distributor of those products, especially if you see that on listings where they're the only seller or there's maybe one or two other sellers. They're probably going to have some kind of exclusivity deal that would kick you off, even if they are not the brand themselves. So keep an eye out for that as well to make sure that these listings are not being controlled by a brand owner or a distributor who has those exclusive rights to a product. Another thing to think about while you're sourcing, in this case, I went ahead and pulled up a hairspray just as an example of a hazmat good. So with SellerAmp, it's automatically going to tell you when a product is hazmat or dangerous goods, so long as you're logged into SellerAmp in a different tab. So I am right now, it's telling me, hey, this is hazmat, this is dangerous goods, you probably don't want to source this. Selling hazmat and all that good stuff takes a little bit of extra credentials. You have to be on a wait list from Amazon and get through the program. I personally don't even sell any hazmat myself, so I would avoid this listing right here. I know, especially with beginners, there's a lot to think about. I remember talking with someone who had just started out and they bought a whole bunch of perfume as their first product, not really thinking about the hazmat dangerous good stuff, and they ended up just kind of getting stuck with a lot of inventory, just because they weren't kind of being attentive, just looking around. It's a lot to think about, right? It's not their fault. There's so much to learn when you're first starting on Amazon. So just make sure you're aware of that. Make sure you don't fall into that same pitfall of buying hazmat goods, think you're going to be allowed to send those into Amazon FBA FBA, and you just wouldn't be able to in this case because it is a hazmat good. You'd have to have that special privilege to be able to sell hazmat items. Another thing to think about while you're sourcing products is how difficult is this item going to be to package. This is something that's kind of underrated for a lot of people. I pulled up this as an example. So for my personal team, I don't allow my team to source anything that is more than a 12 pack. And if it was a 12 pack, it would have to be an insanely high ROI, like a crazy product. Just because this is, it's a 24 pack of cans. A lot of times when you're sourcing these products from online arbitrage stores, especially if you're buying, the cat food in this case, it's probably going to come loose, and then you're going to have to polybag or box together 24 individual little cans. And that's just way, way, way more work than a lot of the much easier low-hanging fruit that you can go out there and get as an Amazon seller. I will say there is some exceptions sometimes, especially if the ROI is super worth it. I was actually noticing over here on the charts that back here in, February, January area, it looks like Amazon was going in and out of stock. We can see the orange kind of disappear there for a little bit. It looks like FBA sellers were selling this for like $43. They were probably buying it for, 50 cents to $1 a can. So I'll be generous and say they're getting it for 18 bucks. Even then, is it worth 40% ROI, $7.20 to, pre-package 24 cans, put it all in a bag, put it all in a box, pay for those boxes or bags? In my opinion, no. Unless you find a crazy ROI product, make sure you're always thinking about how difficult it will be to prep that product. This one kind of ties in just the same. So this is just an example. It's 4 glass mason jars. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't really want to have to package 4 jars together. You'd probably need to pay for a cardboard box, which right away you're paying 80 cents a buck at least for that cardboard box to go ahead and pack up all that inventory in, and then that just immediately starts eating into your margin. So just be very cognizant of what you're sourcing while you're sourcing. Keep an eye out for those, the profitability, all that good stuff we talked about, but also just make sure you're thinking, do I want to prep this item? Do I want to put 4 glass jars in a bag and try to make sure it's not going to break and all that good stuff? In my opinion, no. Another thing to think about here is, if the ROI is super good, maybe price it in, make it worth that risk. So in this case, it's a glass product, so you're going to have a couple of them break. It's just natural. And then in that case, if you're buying this and it's a 30% ROI and hey, some of these are going to break, it's probably a good sign that you shouldn't go ahead and buy that item. It's just not going to work out over time. Same reason we were talking about earlier, where it's really important to stick to your thresholds in terms of ROI and profit to make sure that if anything goes wrong, you've got that all baked into your margins to make sure you're still going to come home with a profit at the end of the day. So if you want to get started sourcing your very first product today or sourcing your 1000th product a little bit faster, go ahead and check out a free trial of SellerAmp. There's going to be a link down below for that. Get you a 2-week free trial, see if it's right for your business, and go ahead and use all that information that we just talked about to make sure that you're actually finding great items while you're out there sourcing inventory to sell on Amazon. If you guys did get a ton of value out of this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. All that good stuff helps us out with the algorithm. Also, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to drop those down below as well. But I really appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you next time.